Believe in the 14 split, one open, big trouble. Instead of finding
You're miles away, but you're close enough to hurt me. Your eyes, your past disguise, hide all that you could be. I don't wanna wake up, I don't wanna wake up, 'cause everything's wrong. And the morning after you were here, I'm still alone. I don't wanna wake up, I don't wanna wake up, 'cause everything's wrong. And the morning after you were here, I'm still alone. I'm still alone. I'm still alone. I'm still alone.
Hi everyone, it's Frank the Tank, and welcome to Spare Shooting 101. So, it's come to my attention that some of you are having trouble making your spares, and some of you really want some insight into what I do when I have to make a spare. Well, you've come to the wrong place. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of you requested this video, and this is a video that I've actually tried to avoid making, because even though my spare game seems somewhat solid, I just don't feel confident in my ability to be able to show you guys how to make spares. One of my biggest concerns is that I may teach you guys something that is either wrong or something that may not even help you at all, or something that could probably make you worse. But you know what? I thought about it and I decided that I don't want to leave you guys out in the cold by not making this video, because I feel like that's what I'd be doing if I didn't make this video. So I'm going to give this a go, and I'm going to do the best that I possibly can in trying to show you guys how to make your spares, because I know a lot of you really look to me for help on, like, you know, you look to me for help on certain things. You look for me for like tips and advice, and that's real heartwarming for me, because, you know, believe it or not, I've never been asked for help, and I never thought I'd be that guy to be asked for help on something. So if this spare shooting thing does help in any kind of way, well then I'm glad that I was able to help you out. But if it didn't, well, then I'm sorry, I tried my best. So please don't go grilling me in the comment section if this didn't help you. Anyways, let's go ahead and let's get on with this video. Okay everybody, so before we get to the whole spare shooting thing, I just want to show you something, and this is like a little piece of advice or a tip, whatever you want to call it, on what to do before you shoot your spares. So one thing that I highly recommend that you do is really clean up your game. But how are you going to do that? Well, this is one way that you could do it, and this is the way that I did it when I really wanted to take my spare game a little bit more seriously and I wanted to get organized. I went out and I got a notebook, and I started writing down every single, I started to write down where I slid and where I would stand for every single spare. And what I did was, obviously, there is no one specific way to shoot a spare. For example, the 10 pin. There isn't like one way to shoot it. Like, you know, you have to do it this way or you're not going to make it. No, there is like tons of different ways that you could shoot it at the 10 pin, and that's the good thing about sparing. You just have to find the one that works for you, and that's why I recommend that you have this notebook so that you can remember where you stood and where you slid. I don't know if you guys could. Am I upside down? No, I'm fine. Okay, yeah. So I don't know if you guys can really read this. See, I wrote down over the months that I was practicing on my on my spare shooting, I wrote down every single kind of every single pin and every spare combo possible, and I wrote down where on what board I would stand on and where I would slide. But after this whole sliding thing, I you know, started to not pay attention to where I slid, because you know, it didn't really matter after, you know, after a while, and you guys are probably going to see that later. But yeah, this will definitely help you out, because I'm not going to lie, before my whole spare shooting thing, I used to be that kind of guy that just stood wherever and never stood on the same board for a certain spare. I just stood wherever, and then I shot at the 10 pin hoping for the best, and that was not the way to do it. And I knew that in order to really, you know, brush up on my sparing and take it seriously and really get organized, I had to, you know, memorize every where I stood for every single certain spare and spare combo. So this is what I did, and it's something that I highly recommend you guys try, you know, if you really want to brush up on your sparing. So that way, when a certain spare combo or a certain single pin shows up and that you have to spare, you know exactly where to stand because you have it written down. So be sure that you experiment with this, try out a bunch of different ways, and then find the one that really works for you, and then write it down. So this is something that I want you guys to try. I hope it works out for you. It worked for me. As you can see in most of my videos, my spare game is pretty solid. I'm not going to say it's the greatest, because I miss my spares, you know, here and there. But you know, at least I make my spares more than I miss them, which is what you want, right? In order to be a good player, you got to make your spares. And you know, as they say, spares are the ones that win the games, not the strikes. So yeah. Next time you go to the bowling alley to practice your spares, take a notebook and a pen or pencil with you, and be prepared to write everything down. Okay, everybody, to get this thing started, I am going to start with sparing some single pins. I'm going to show you everything that I do and everything that leads up to it. The pre-shot routine, I guess, is what they call it. So let's go ahead and let's get this thing started. Oh yeah, and another thing, allow me to introduce the ever so awesome POV shot that's now officially on my channel. Now, I actually introduced this a while back. I introduced this in my IQ Tour Emerald ball review, but I do remember that I put coming soon at the end of that video, but as you can see, I waited way too long. Here we are a few months later, and I finally decided to use it. So, yeah, I just had no idea how and when I was going to use this. You know, I had no ideas for any videos, but now, you know, I realized, hey, I can use this when picking up my spares and show my viewers what it looks like from my point of view. So now here we are finally using it, and I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope it really helps you so you can really see what it looks like through my point of view when I'm picking up my spares. So, one thing I want to say is I apologize in advance if the camera is like really shaky, because, you know, I tried my best to stay as stable as possible, but it's so impossible to like know how good the recording looks when you can't see what's going on, because, you know, the camera's right between your eyes. But yeah, I tried my best, so I just want to apologize beforehand. I'm sorry. It's really hard to know what you're looking at with the camera, and yeah, but anyway, let's go ahead and let's get this thing started. Okay, everybody, before we get this spare show on the road, I must now show you all of the steps that I take when I'm going to spare a single pin or a certain kind of spare combo. So as you can see here, I left the 1, 2, 4, 8. Now, I start off by taking a quick look in my notebook because I have no idea what board I'm supposed to stand on for this spare. Now, this isn't really part of my steps. It's just, you know, I don't have everything memorized yet, and I refuse to memorize everything because I'm lazy like that. But anyway, I start this thing off by doing the real step 1, which is my pre-shot routine. I wipe the oil off my spare ball, which is unnecessary, but it's something that I do. It's just a habit. And then I air off my hands because, you know, I don't know about you guys, but my hands get real sweaty real fast. But anyway, yeah, now that I know that I know what board I have to stand on, I stand on board 10 for the 1, 2, 4, 8 spare. And then standing on board 10, I turn my body slightly, not too much, just slightly, to face directly at those pins that I'm trying to spare. And this is also a very important tip that I forgot to mention to you guys about, when you're sparing something, is always give yourself some kind of an angle towards those pins. Don't ever stand directly, in line with them, if you know what I mean. Always open up the lane to yourself when you're trying to spare a pin or pins. Now this next step is more of a mental thing, and I don't know how it would work for you guys, but it really works for me really, really well when I'm sparing something. This next step is I then draw a line, after I've angled myself, of course. I then draw an imaginary line with my mind and my eyes from those pins all the way to the foul line, from that, where I have angled myself. And yeah, that's basically what I do. I draw that line from where I want that ball to hit the pins all the way down to the foul line, and then once I have found my line, I then know what I have to do. And then, of course, is my next step, and this is the most important step of them all. You must now acquire a taste for freeform jazz. Okay, that part's not true, but if you want to go ahead and add that to your steps, then that's your choice. But anyways, now that I have my imaginary line drawn and I know what I need to do, I take like 2 to 3 more seconds, and then I go for it. And that is everything that I do when I try to spare a single pin or a combination of spares. So yeah, I know that seemed like a whole hell of a lot, but believe me when I tell you, doing it is a lot quicker than actually saying it. But now that you guys know what I do, let's go ahead and start sparing some single pins. Okay everyone, the first single pin that I'm going to talk about is the head pin and the 5 pin. Now, since the head pin and the 5 pin are both positioned on the exact same line, I'm only going to talk about one of them because it'd be pointless to talk about both of them since they're both, pretty much on the exact same line. And the only difference, obviously, is that the 5 is right behind the 1, but still. Anyways, what I do to pick up this spare is I stand on board 7, and of course I do that thing where I turn my body slightly to face directly with that pin. Of course, I've given myself that angle, and then I draw that imaginary line, and of course, I go for it. Okay, now we're going to move on to the 3 pin. Now, this one I actually do a little bit differently. I don't give myself that angle, or I don't turn my body to look at it from some certain board. I actually go pretty straight at this one, much like this.
His draw rep and said, I don't know, there's something going on here, like a ball sticking to my finger.
So yeah, so in order to be able to achieve sparing the 3 pin in this sort of way, what I do is I stand on board 7 like I did with the head pin and 5 pin. And then the only difference here is that I don't continue going in that same direction as I did with the 5 pin. What I do is I actually slide a little bit more inward. You can kind of notice a difference here in this clip from the 5 pin and then the 3 pin. So yeah, with the 5 pin, I continue to slide kind of in that direction, whereas with the 3 pin, I actually change my direction a little bit as I'm sliding so that I could be able to, make the ball go as straight as possible to that 3 pin. Okay guys, the next one that we're going to talk about is the 6 pin. Now there's 2 ways you could go at this. One is a way that I recommend, and the other is the way that I don't recommend. I'm going to talk about the one that I don't recommend first. Now, the one that I don't recommend is going literally straight at it like I did with the 3 pin. The only difference is for the 3 pin I stood on board 7. For the 6 pin, you want to stand on board 10 and then do the exact same as done with the 3 pin. Now the reason that I don't recommend that you do it this way is because the right side of the lane can probably get very dry to the point where the ball will probably not be able to make it, and it will end up hooking away from that 6 pin. So I actually have been met with this result several times, so that's the reason that I prefer to go a little bit more across the lane to the 6 pin rather than going straight at it like you saw there. But don't believe me, It is possible to make it this way, but the only time that you want to make it this way is when you know there is enough oil on that right side of the lane to get that spare ball to carry all the way down there to the 6 pin. Now I'm going to show you the much safer route that I take when I'm trying to spare this 6 pin, going cross the lane, well, somewhat cross the lane. So to do this, I stand on board 25 and then I slide at about, I would say, board 31, 32-ish, somewhere around that. And because I'm playing the ball from the left side of the lane and sending it across to the right side of the lane, I can't use that whole imaginary line thing that I do like when I'm sparing every other pin that's on the left side of the lane, if that makes any sense. So instead, I have to watch very closely where the ball travels down the lane, especially when it passes over the first set of arrows, to know exactly where I have to play the ball if I ever have the 6 pin again. And the same thing goes for when I leave the 10 pin, I have to do the exact same thing. And the reason I can't do that imaginary line thing is because in my approach, I have to do that slight drift to the left, and the 6 and 10 pin are on the right side of the lane, whereas every other pin I have to spare. I have enough space to be able to move right, to be able to put all those other pins to my left, if you know what I mean. I hope that wasn't too confusing, but that's the best way I could possibly put it. Okay, now we're going to talk about the dreaded 10 pin. Every right-hander's worst nightmare, the one that drives us all insane. So here's what I do when I have the 10 pin and I need to pick it up. What I do is I stand on board 27 and then I slide at about board 37. And then I make sure that the ball passes in between the 4th and 5th arrow. But there is something else that you have to keep in mind when you are sparing this 10 pin. You're going to want to feel how much power you're putting into your swing, because how much power you put into your swing actually helps determine how far the ball will skid out to the right side of the lane to reach that 10 pin. So if you ever wonder why the ball ended up passing by the left side of the 10 pin and you end up missing it, despite the fact that you sent the ball through the arrows the right way, it's probably because you didn't give it enough power. And if you end up sending the ball to the gutter, it's probably because you angled it wrong. Okay everybody, now we're going to move to all the pins on the left side. We'll start with the 2 and the 8 since they're both positioned on the exact same line. You know the deal. I'm only going to talk about one of them because they're both the same thing. So what I do for this one is I stand on board 10. I don't remember where I slide. You guys are going to have to take a guess on that one. But you know the deal. Slightly like turn my body to face directly to that pin so I give myself that angle. Draw that imaginary line and of course I go for it. Okay, moving forward, we go with the 4 pin. So for this one, I actually like to give myself a little bit more angle than I did compared to the 2 pin. So what I do is I go back to the 7 board again, and then I slide at about, I think, board 17, 18-ish. And you guys know the rest of it from there. And last but not least, the 7 pin. So for this one, I stand on board 10 and I slide at about board 20. And of course, you guys know the rest of it from there. So that's how I spare all of my single pins. Now you guys know the whole mental side of it, and now you know where I stand, where I slide, and everything I do beforehand to prepare myself for making a spare. So I was gonna talk about, and I was also gonna show you guys how I make certain spare combinations, you know, like the 3-6-10, the 6-10, the 1-2-4, the 4-7, just to name a few. But unfortunately, the video is already way too long, so we'll save the spare combos for later. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped in some kind of way. If it didn't, then once again, I'm sorry. I tried the best I could. Anyways, I'm Frank the Tank. I'll see you guys in another one. Good day to you all.
Satisfied with one.
Oh, and he got it! Oh, he missed it on the first go-round, but got the kick. 4-10 split conversion.